So has anyone noticed that we seem to be getting a lot more Left 4 Dead type games recently? I mean, World War Z is getting a major update at the end of this month, Back 4 Blood is getting a release next month, Aliens Fireteam Elite just released a couple of weeks ago, and at some point we're getting games like the Anacrusis, Darktide and Redfall. I mention this because I'm pretty sure I said the exact same thing in the past about another game, but Aliens Fireteam Elite is basically the equivalent of Left 4 Dead but with aliens. Okay, not entirely. While this game does stick to the Left 4 Dead formula for the most part, I would consider this more of a direct comparison to something like Alien Swarm over Left 4 Dead. And if that name doesn't ring a bell, it's a very underrated free-to-play game by Valve. It's a 4-player top-down game where a squad of 4 members are sent to investigate and clear out a facility overrun with strange creatures. It's rather fun, but it's incredibly lacking considering the fact that it only launched with one campaign. I might cover this game down the line in the future, but in case I don't and you're curious about it, Reactive Drop is definitely the way to go with this game. It's much better. As for how my time with Aliens Fireteam Elite went, well, for a change it's quite positive, as the game is actually rather good. Now, I should mention I didn't have any high expectations for this game considering it was just kind of announced out of nowhere and it's from a developer I've never even heard of. I should also mention that I don't really have much exposure to the Aliens franchise either. At most, my views would come from Aliens Covenant and from playing Aliens Colonial Marines 3 times. So, to put it as my friend said it, my knowledge of this franchise is quite embarrassing. I think the only crucial detail I know about this is apparently there's a difference between Alien and Aliens. As in Alien, it was a horror film, however Aliens was more of a focus on action. And this is important because it carries over to the games as well. Aliens Colonial Marines is a first-person action shooter, while Alien Isolation is a first-person horror title. So it goes to show that other than making my life a living nightmare, the letter S is quite important. The plot to Aliens Fireteam Elite is pretty standard. You're a squad of Marines who are put through different scenarios like investigating a location or performing a search and rescue while fighting off hordes of xenomorphs. That's probably not entirely true. There is an ongoing story in this game which is revealed by NPCs in the hub world and even additional intel that you can find in the level of a campaign, but honestly I wasn't invested. This could just be due to the lack of investment into the franchise, but the story to this game did not grip me at all. The dialogue between characters in this game comes across as basic and poorly written. Your own character doesn't really say anything out of generic voice lines, and all the exposition is filled in by someone over the radio who sounds like they should be there with you. It doesn't help when the campaigns have no real variation of dialogue either, so after you've heard it once, you tend to just drown it out after it gets replayed several times. As for the NPCs in the hub world, it's not much better either. Some characters have a bit more branched out set of dialogue, but nothing really made me want to stop and listen to it. It just felt like a tedious time waster because when you complete most levels, you have to go back to the hub world, talk to someone, unlock a new level, and then you can go back in. And that pretty much sums up the hub world altogether. I'm not entirely sure why this is a trend in games these days, but the hub world in Fireteam Elite seems like a waste of time. The only thing you do is go here to talk to people about missions and also buy new equipment. Anything like the matchmaking and your cosmetics or your loadout is done via a menu, so why these two things couldn't be done by that same menu is beyond me. Luckily, unless someone is AFK in your lobby, you don't really spend much time in this area. At most, you're looking at 5 minutes. So it doesn't really dampen the overall experience of the game, or at least it didn't for me, because I found the rest of the game to be rather fun. The game itself is split into 2 modes. There's the main mode being the campaign mode, and a horde mode that you beat after unlocking every campaign. The campaign is definitely the best part of this game, but I'll quickly go over the horde mode. It's basically just your standard survival mode. It's fine for about 5 minutes. I didn't really find it that interesting. It has 1 map currently, and from the looks of it, very little variety to offer. It's a nice additional bonus from beating the game once, don't get me wrong, but I wouldn't be surprised if this gets very little support down the line. If they decided to make this mode more like the survival mode from Mass Effect 3, where you could have a few little objectives every couple of ways and also decide who you fight against, this could be an interesting mode, but as of writing this, you'll probably forget it exists. The campaign mode, however, is great. At launch we have 4 campaigns, each containing 3 levels with some rather pleasing visuals that last roughly 40 minutes to an hour depending on the difficulty. Apart from the first campaign, each of the other campaigns each contain a unique enemy type for you to fight alongside the xenomorph, which makes the replay value a little bit more enticing. In one campaign you'll be fighting synthetics, which are basically ranged enemies with firearms, while in another campaign you'll encounter facehuggers, which, after hearing the hype about these things, frankly it's a little underwhelming. Whenever an enemy or a facehugger in this game attempts to pin you, you're given a quick time event that is frankly ridiculously easy to deal with, and they rarely cause any real damage to you. In fact, I think the most damage you're going to get in this game is from friendly fire, especially when they're using a flamethrower. And what makes matters worse is once you're dead in this game, you are just dead, you don't come back for the rest of the level. Now I know to some people this is going to be a bit of a negative because if you die at the start of a level you're just stuck in spectator mode for the rest of it, but I think the pressure of only having 3 members in a team is an interesting idea because once one member dies, shit really does hit the fan, and things can go bad really fast. But if you think this game is too easy or too hard, you also have the additional option of a challenge card. These challenge cards will reward you with either more credits or bonus XP to level characters and weapons, and the challenges you get are things like removing the game HUD, working together to deal a total amount of damage, and some challenge cards will make the game easier like more health or more damage. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well doesn't this sound a bit like Raid World War II? And that's because it's pretty much the exact same thing. Yes, in 2021, Raid is still relevant to me. What is my life? When it comes to the character customization, it's rather basic. Each class has a rather basic but interesting approach to the skill system where you end up playing a game of Tetris to see what you can fit onto the board to either buff yourself or your abilities. Weapons, again, are basic. They have 3 separate attachments that provide a static boost and also a little bonus while focusing on things like additional damage while standing still. And as you can expect in every modern game, there are weapon skins. What was surprising in this game is that you can make your own character. It's still, again, rather basic, with some voice banks and, you know, some heads and hair. But you can also customize your armor and also wear different hats, and also have a selection of emotes. Because this game has an emote wheel for some reason. Don't know why, but here we are. The gun variety in this game is decent. You have the usual like rifles, SMGs, shotguns, rocket launchers like in most co-op games. But what I like is that certain weapons are locked to certain classes. So for example, a heavy weapon is locked to the demolitions class, while a sniper rifle would be best suited for the recon class. The classes themselves, however, I feel could use some readjusting. When you start the game, you're given access to several classes, with an additional being unlocked after beating the campaign. These classes give you specific abilities, one being a passive and 2 being deployed. These classes are pretty straightforward, like a medic, soldier, engineer and so on, but they feel a little unbalanced. The engineer to me is easily the best class in this game, especially once you unlock the deployable flamethrower turret, while the medic, the class you think would be the most useful, is frankly useless in this game. The medic has a deployable med station that will heal people over time within a specific radius. This is fine and works as intended, but once the health station is drained, you can only recharge it by picking up a med kit, and you get an extra recharge bonus if people are standing by when you pick up a med kit. And here lies the problem. So every character starts with a medkit, so unless you take damage and heal yourself with it or heal someone else with that first, you can't pick up another medkit. But if you've healed someone else, chances are you don't need to deploy your health station. So both the medkit and the med station end up counteracting each other. And what makes matters worse is if you're playing in a public game, you have no way to tell your teammates not to heal themselves, because for some reason in an online cooperative game in 2021, the developers have launched the game with no voice chat or text chat, and from the looks of it, they don't even plan to add it. Now you could make the argument that yes, if there's no voice chat, then just play with bots, and sure, that is an option. However, there's 2 problems to that. Firstly, the total medkits dropped in the map depending on how many players are in the lobby, so if there's only 2 actual players, only 2 medkits spawn at resupply points. And secondly, bots have the ability to heal themselves without a medkit, so playing medic on solo is putting yourself at a disadvantage. Yes, I cannot believe I'm saying this, but the AI in Aliens Fireteam Elite is surprisingly good and is good enough to make the medic class worthless. To my surprise, the developers took the time to work on the teammate AI in this game, and while they can't hold themselves on the hardest difficulties, they're not brain dead either. They can dodge, heal themselves, and even throw grenades. How this game can do it right while games like World War Z and Back 4 Blood have struggled with these simple things is honestly beyond me. And while this game is a lot of fun, I feel like the developers started to save time and cut corners in certain areas, but didn't realise that the areas they cut were pretty obvious to notice when you're playing the game. And there's a few areas in this game which definitely need some attention, so things like a lack of FOV slider, the reload animations not existing on weapon models, especially the shotguns, the lack of facial animations for NPCs in the hub world, but my favourite one of all, there is no sound to the emotes in this game. It looks so bad. Now, I don't think Aliens Fireteam Elite is bad in any means, which, being someone who knows fuck all about the Aliens franchise, might not mean much, but regardless, this is a fun game. But I can't help but admit that I feel like my attention to this game overall is going to be short-lived, similar to a game like Earthfall, which I still had almost 100 hours in, so that's not entirely terrible. But I can't see myself playing this a ton like World War Z, but considering the main chunks of the future content for this game are planned to be free, if they made some new campaigns, I'll definitely come back to it. But there's one thing I've noticed while writing this, which I find funny while playing through this game, is that Cold Iron Studios is a company that just kind of came out of nowhere with this game, and yet it's somehow a better co-op experience than the Aliens game made by Gearbox. You know, the developers who made Borderlands. Seriously, if you've looked into the story of Colonial Marines, the only thing I can say to that is, seriously, fuck Randy Pitchford.
I've been stealing from aliens my entire career.